being here.
Like that last year too. Yeah. Oh, it's on right now?
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, is this for them? Thank you so much for being here to hear the presentation on the fiscal 2026 budget. And so just congratulations, Jay, for putting this budget together. And thank you to all the staff members who had a hand in it. So very proud of everything that you're doing. And so for those that can stay to the very end, we have representatives from a lot of the departments here. So if you have any concerns, and you catch them one-on-one at the end. But just wanted to welcome you and allow Jay to kick this off.
Thank you, Councilwoman Martinez. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out. We're
going across the city and going through this budget presentation. We're going to start off with a little video, and then we're going to go into a presentation. I'll be handing it over to Christy-Ann Simmons, who's our head of our lab, the Fort Worth lab that puts the budget together, does a lot of the number crunching. And then afterwards, we'll be available for questions. And while she's presenting, if you have anything, questions, concern, as you see the slides, just raise your hands and we can answer those as we go along. So we're going to kick it off with the little video. If we could start that.
Fort Worth reflects smart, strategic growth, benefiting from a fast-growing economy, safe and clean neighborhoods, and a high quality of life for all residents. This year, we reached a historic milestone, 1 million residents strong. With that growth comes opportunity to invest wisely and plan sustainably for the future. For fiscal year 2026, the city is proposing a $3.09 billion budget, including a $1.1 billion general fund, focused on 5 city council priorities: community safety, infrastructure, community investment, economic development, and responsible growth. We are enhancing community safety by adding neighborhood police officers, providing full-year funding for our brand-new EMS service, and launching a new emergency management and communications department. And just as safety is essential, so is the infrastructure that keeps our city moving. We're prioritizing street maintenance and 2 major water treatment facility projects, while strengthening staffing to ensure crucial infrastructure projects are delivered on target. Our neighborhoods remain at the heart of our plan, supported by strengthening the priority repair and neighborhood improvement programs, expanding the mobile toolshed program to assist more homeowners, and adds resources to our animal shelters. By strengthening the places we live, we also lay the foundation for a thriving local economy. To boost economic growth, we're launching a small business development program and upgrading the Will Rogers Complex and Convention Center. We're delivering for today and planning for tomorrow. This is reflected by updating service fees for water, stormwater, solid waste, and environmental protection to improve flood mitigation and ensure sustainable operations. And through PAYGO funding, a small but powerful portion of your property tax, we're increasing investment in street and park maintenance. Over the past decade, Fort Worth has kept budget growth in check, thanks to consistent tax rate reductions. The proposed tax rate of 67 cents is a decrease from last year. The typical household with a homestead exemption will pay less in city taxes this year. Out of the 67-cent property tax rate, over 52 cents funds operations and maintenance, and 14 cents goes towards debt. We maintain a fiscally responsible strategy and a strong credit rating, enabling the city to fund upcoming bond programs. The City Council will review the budget throughout August, with a final vote on September 16th.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Christy-Ann so she can go through the presentation.
Good afternoon. I'll put my water over here. Make sure my clicker works. All right. How's everyone? Thank you for being here on a Saturday afternoon. I keep saying 10, but I think it's 20 something slides. But they should be fast. I want to get through just like a baseline of information, and feel free to ask questions along the way. And we'll certainly have time at the end as well. Lots of city staff here to help answer whatever questions you might have. My name, again, is Christy-Ann Simmons, and I oversee the work of the Fort Worth Lab. The lab, among other things, is the city's budget developer, and so we develop and manage the budget all year long. And so I was joking this morning that after September 16th, we might take a short nap, and then we'll start fiscal year 27. And so we love the budget in the lab, and we like to share with you. So we'll start with some overarching themes. So of course, every fiscal year we deal with a number of themes as we begin to develop the budget. And it's not quite like right after September 16th, but pretty early on in the fiscal year, we begin to model and create scenarios for what the next year might look like, right? So first and foremost, as you're very well aware, as residents of the city and stakeholders, we're growing really fast. The video mentioned we hit 1 million residents in July of 2024. So we're really above that now and continue to grow at the rate of about 20,000 people a year. And so that is exciting, but it also comes with a lot of complexity and trade-offs. And so we try to keep those in mind as we develop the budget each year, including this year. Another thing this year was about property taxes. So obviously property tax, you probably know this, it's the biggest revenue source we have in the general fund. So we always watch it and model it really closely. This year there was an extra sort of wrench in that the Tarrant Appraisal District adopted a reappraisal plan that only appraises residential properties with a homestead every other year. And so we weren't sure exactly how that would change the values, which then of course lead to our rate setting and revenue process. So we thought, will growth be totally flat on existing values? Will we see a couple of percentage points like we usually do? So we were sort of building and presenting to council some different scenarios throughout that process, and you'll get to see how some of that worked out. And then fiscal responsibility is one of council's priorities, something that's really important to us, really important to you. And really with a new city manager in the seat, he's not new to the city at all, but new in his position. He really wanted to take a targeted surgical look at the different departments and their budgets, how they've evolved over the last few years especially. The city manager asked the departments to cut their budgets by 1% going into the budget. So before we really did anything else, we kind of tightened that belt with an initial percentage point there that saved a bunch of millions of dollars in the general fund, about 7. And then we did additional 3% reduction exercises too. Again, all kind of not knowing what our revenue would be. So we were trying to prepare for constrained revenues. We also looked at fees. We do that every year as part of the budget process. You'll see a number of fee changes this year during this presentation that we feel are necessary for capital planning and sustainability of different services that the city offers. We also wanted to sustain our cash investment in, hey guys, welcome. Sustain our cash investment in capital maintenance, which is done through the pay-go portion of the tax rate, which we can talk about that in a minute, and maintain our investment in debt service, which is what gives us future bond capacity. So again, growth, we need budget and debt capacity to do big capital projects. So those were some of the themes, and this is not a year where we're adding lots of positions or really increasing a ton of different service lines throughout the city, really focusing on council priorities and core services for fiscal year 26. We were able to sustain the high service levels being provided by police and fire, in addition to funding a full year for the first time of emergency medical services. So many of you know that the city took over EMS in July of this year. So we had kind of a quarter of activity, almost a quarter so far. Fiscal year 26 will be the first year that we have a full year of that activity and the associated funding. So that was a big discussion, that many of you may have been involved in over the last year. PAYGO, we mentioned, this budget provides additional capital maintenance dollars for streets and parks. And then some community investment type of programs, and we'll talk about these a bit more, but housing priority repair, a couple of code programs like the mobile tool shed, that's a new program that's being expanded, additional resources for the animal shelter, and then also looking at employee pay, wellness benefits, things of that nature. So I mentioned council priorities. The council does have actual adopted strategic priorities. These are those. These are the 5. And they're not in any particular order. But as we talk about every decision, but certainly with the budget, we want to make sure that we're looking at the level of funding per priority and making sure we're well balanced and that all of our budgeted resources tie to a specific priority or sometimes, of course, more than one. So from that lens, just looking kind of at our milestones or like major kind of budget moves this year, community safety, we mentioned EMS. So again, it went live on July 1st, and this will be the first year that we fully fund it. It's a special revenue fund, but the general fund has a piece of it. I'll tell you about that later. We also started or kind of established for the first time a new emergency management and communications department. So in most cases, these are resources that were already existing in the city, but we've consolidated them from police and fire, the Office of Emergency Management, which was already operating, and kind of put them together to be really targeted as a new department. So they'll have performance metrics and business plans like our departments do. That is a really high priority for the city this year, particularly with not just events and like emergency management, but also 911, which we hear a lot about from residents. And then on the police side, we are adding additional NPOs. I know many of you might know and love your NPO. The police department did a beat study, and they hadn't studied their beats in a long time. And as a result, just because of how the city's changed and grown, they added 12 new beats. And so we were able to add NPOs to cover those beats. So that's a good thing. Those are funded in CCPD. We also received a request from Fort Worth ISD for additional school resource officers. We split those 50-50 with the schools, and so we're able to fund those in this budget as well. Question?
Yeah,
Oh, and I have to remind you to use the mic because they're streaming. I know. Okay, I'll probably repeat your question.
closed 14 schools. Why do they need additional resource officers?
Her question was, if the district closed 14 schools, why would they need additional resource officers? It's a state mandate, right? Yep.
So right now, we're trying to build up to have Fort Worth officers in elementary schools. We have them in middle schools and high schools. There's more than enough schools that don't have patrol officers in there right now. So the closing of the 12 schools does not impact this at all.
On the infrastructure, oh, sorry. I'm going to need mic help. Yep. Go ahead.
Does the police department provide school resource officers to charter schools or just the independent school district?
I don't think we have them at charter. Yes, no police officers at charter schools at this time. What's that? Oh. They may not just have, they probably don't have a dedicated school resource officers, not that perhaps. They're paying them overtime. The charter school pays them. Okay. Thank you. That's good clarification. Okay. This is a lively group. I can already tell. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to stay over here. Infrastructure, another really top priority that we hear a lot about at the city. This budget prioritizes street maintenance. We continually see street maintenance as the top, if not almost the top priority in the community surveys that we do, and council offices say the same. This budget prioritizes street maintenance through a couple of things. The first is just more dollars towards street maintenance, which happens through the pay-as-you-go portion of the tax rate. But also studying implementation of a street maintenance fee. That's a conversation that's been had over the last year, kind of revived a few times. And so council has expressed interest in studying what that might look like, the way it would be structured and who would pay for that and that kind of thing. So in fiscal year 26, in the budget for streets, we have some resources to kind of determine what that might look like for future implementation. We also added a few personnel, not in the general fund, but in capital projects related funds that can help with more efficient delivery of capital projects. Right now, the city pays consultants to do a lot of that, and we think we can do it more efficiently and more cheaply in-house in some cases, and so this budget does that as well. And then there's a number of large water capital projects this year as well. As you may know, water is not just a city service, it's actually a regional utility, and they, as you might imagine, with our rapid growth, have a lot of capital need. Community investment, I mentioned the Housing Priority Repair Program. This is a program out of the Neighborhood Services Department. Its primary purpose is to help people who are they own homes to stay in their homes when an emergency repair occurs and they might not have resources to do that. I think the primary demographic or user of this program is typically senior citizens, definitely not limited to senior citizens, but we do have a demand for that program, and so we have actually increased the investment in that program this year by about $500,000. It's a $2 million program now. In fiscal year 25, we got a new code director, and he brought a great idea from the city of Arlington for a mobile tool shed, and it got piloted in 2 or 3 different neighborhoods, and we've seen some success there. So we've recommended to expand that program in the fiscal year 26 budget. It's what it sounds like. The purpose of it is to assist people that may not have the equipment that they need to take care of what becomes code violation. So they'll bring you a lawnmower or a weed eater or something. You can reserve those things. A mobile tool shed pulls up, you use those things, and then you send them back. A couple of other increased resources for code compliance and animal services. So, for example, in the animal shelters, there are positions that deal with animals, obviously, like kennel technicians, where we have a lot of turnover. This budget actually provides some contractual resources to keep those services moving even when vacancies occur. And then the neighborhood improvement program is being continued in this budget at one neighborhood a year. That is a popular program for many. And then finally, next budget year, we have a library opening in the far northwest side of the city. But at the end of this budget year, we have to staff it, kind of hire the people and train them so that they can be there when it opens. And so that is also part of the fiscal year 26 budget. Another strategic priority, economic development, important to the council. A couple things in this budget to highlight. This budget expands the partnership with local chambers, so that's the Fort Worth Chamber, the Metropolitan Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to deliver small business development program. You may have heard some of this over the last couple of months. We've been talking about it at the council level. It also funds a refresh of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. It's been a number of years since that was done, and we are bringing on a new director to economic development, so we thought this is a good time to sort of re-examine the economic development strategy of the city of Fort Worth. On the public events or culture and tourism side, this budget also invests in the Will Rogers Memorial Center, as well as a big convention center expansion that you may have been hearing is coming. Well, fiscal year 26 is the year for that big expansion, I think phase 2. And then we continue investing in economic development initiatives to bring commercial to Fort Worth. Oh, we got hands. Okay. Sorry that you have to use the mic.
Hello, my name is Christopher Johnson. I'm a community advocate and former candidate for District 11. My question to you, how much is being invested in economic development? What dollar amount? And also I want to know more about Main Street America. Is that part of the economic development?
Okay. Economic development, you want to talk about that? I don't remember the economic development budget off the top of my head. We'll look it up.
So the actual budget and economic development department, I'm not exactly sure that I know what the number is. Do you know what the number is? The actual budget number for economic development? But I can answer your Main Street America question. So the Main Street America project was funded through what's called a local development corporation. So the city has a separate little corporate group that uses funds that are not tax dollars. They're dollars that came in from projects that were done previously, and there's sources of revenue from there that not included tax dollars. And so the Main Street America project was a competitive based for nonprofits in town that wanted to see redevelopment of corridors, and they applied, and so the North Main got selected and Texas Wesleyan got selected. Both of those were, or I guess originally it was Southeast Fort Worth Inc., but now it's Texas Wesleyan for the Poly area on Rosedale. And so now they went through their initial 3-year process, and now they both got renewed to keep it operating for another 2 years, I believe. So that's where that is right now. The overall economic development budget is $10 million, but that includes the staff, and it includes expenditures associated with, providing dollars for community redevelopment and incentives type dollars and those kind of things all in there. Usually the incentives though are provided out of actual taxes that'll be created by a project. So those don't exist now. So we try not to use existing tax dollars for incentives. We try to use the dollars that are being created by the project that comes in. So yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Reba Henry, Polytechnic Heights South Neighborhood Association. I'm also sitting on the advisory board for the Main Street project. And just a little slight correction, and I believe I am correct. the focus of that project is on Vaughn Boulevard, not Rosedale.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I may be wrong for that. Economic development funds. You mentioned that the Black Chamber, Hispanic Chamber, and overall Greater Chamber are funded. Do we at all support the Indigenous Peoples Chamber and the Asian American Chamber?
We do not, as far as I know, I'm not sure that they have a chamber in Fort Worth. The Asian Chamber is based in Arlington.
Okay.
And we've had conversations with them in the past, and they thought about, this was 15 years ago, creating something in Fort Worth, but they decided to keep it in Arlington.
I thought we did have one. My apologies.
That's okay.
Great questions. Thank you. All right, and last council priority, but not least, responsible growth. This is kind of a very broad catch-all kind of category. So these are some of the things that we thought we'd highlight, but obviously many things fall into the form of responsible growth. In fiscal year 26, we're going to continue advancing the 2050 comprehensive plan. And so that's the plan that all plans flow from. That's kind of the overarching, what do we want to be in 2050? And so some of you as engaged residents may have already participated in initial comp plan conversations. We had a whole phase of engagement earlier this year. On the comp plan, we'll do more engagement in October, and that will be married with bond program engagement too, so that will be a really interesting time to share thoughts again. But the comp plan team is continuing that work. We are also looking at vehicles and equipment, which isn't like the funnest topic, right? But it's real. In the city, as we continue to grow and our fleet ages, we want to make sure that we're trying to keep up. We're not quite keeping up. And we have a number of vehicles that are eligible to replace that we don't have funding to replace. And that's transportation and public works, that's parks, it runs the gamut of departments. But we did add a bit more funding in fiscal year 26 to try to close a little bit of that gap. We are also in the middle of a pay study. This is an internal employee pay study, not civil service, but almost every other job type in the city is being studied to make sure that we are competitive in the market with other large cities and the private sector, all the folks we compete with to retain talent, recruit and retain talent. We don't have the results of that study yet, but we figure when we get them in April or May, there may be some low-hanging fruit that city management and city council wants to begin to implement. And so there is a bucket in the budget for that. And then finally, we'll talk a little more about fee structure soon, but there are some fee structure adjustments as well. So you'll see a slight redesign of the rate in water, between water and wastewater, environmental protection, solid waste, and stormwater. Those are all fees you see on your water bill, and we'll talk a bit about those. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Everybody good? All right, property tax. Just a quick snap about property tax. This won't take long. In fiscal year 25, the taxable values across the city, we have 4 different appraisal districts: Tarrant, Wise, Parker, Denton. Almost said Johnson. That's not true. Denton. The large majority of that is Tarrant. Like 95% of our values come from Tarrant. And so we especially watch their activities, which is why I mentioned that reappraisal plan earlier. But in fiscal year 25, across those 4, our taxable value was $121.9 billion in value. And then the next little rows on the table, you can see the growth. And so the first row, change in taxable value, this means that our existing values across the city went up 3.4% for fiscal year 26. So that's existing property value. This is kind of the one we were watching quite closely because we didn't know if it would be, again, not totally flat, but much flatter than usual because of that reappraisal plan. But 3.4% is pretty good. We can capture 3.5% growth anyway, so we're just kind of bumping up right against that cap that's set by state law. And then new construction, 2.5% growth. That's a pretty good number for us. We've seen it between 2 and 3% over the last few years. So that all adds up to, for fiscal year 26, the taxable value, that we're looking at is $129 billion. And that's where, we begin to calculate from there kind of what the rate should be and the revenue that we'll levy as a result. So as the video mentioned, and as you may have seen, the recommended tax rate is 67 cents per $100 valuation. That's the same tax rate across the city for businesses, for residents. It's a 1/4 cent drop from our current tax rate of 67 1/4. And on the right-hand side, I know that might be a little small, but that's a little chart of the way the 67 cents breaks out. So on the bottom branch is debt service. That is the portion that I mentioned in the beginning. We didn't want to reduce that. We want to preserve our future debt capacity for bond projects and other. And so 14 and 3/4 cents goes to debt service. And then in the top branch, you'll see kind of a split off there. 52 and 1/4 cents goes to the operations and maintenance side of the budget. So that is the top 45 cents is like, that's what funds the general fund, a lot of the general fund, 45 cents. And then the part that says capital, that 7 and 1/4 cents is PAYGO. So you heard a little bit about PAYGO. That stands for pay as you go, cash funded capital maintenance. So instead of doing like issuing debt for street maintenance and to maintain parks and that kind of thing, this is a dedicated portion of your tax rate. I think the video called it like small and mighty or something, that funds capital maintenance so that we're not issuing debt for those things. And we did not want to reduce that portion either, because you know, as well as I do, that capital maintenance is needed and not getting any less expensive. So that's the way the 67 cents breaks down. Any questions on property tax rate before I move to a couple more items? Okay. This is just a snapshot of the total operating budget for fiscal year 26. $3.1 billion, just under. That's not all the general fund, but these are all the operating funds. The general fund's the biggest. It's kind of the main operating fund for the city. That's where you'll find police, parks, fire, TPW, with transportation, libraries, a lot of things you think of as core services, primarily funded in the general fund. It's growing at about 4.5%. And then you'll see a couple of other fund type groupings there. So special revenue we'll talk about. That includes CCPD and the new EMS fund. Enterprise service, that includes water and stormwater and solid waste. And then we have internal service funds. Those are funds that city departments charge other city departments to do, hence the name. So like our in-house fleet team, when they do work for a department, they bill that department. So it's kind of like interfund transferring. So stopping quickly on the general fund, since it's again kind of the largest source for operating, right? $1.1 billion, 4.5% growth. That equates to about $48 million in growth. The top two lines here, the top section's revenue. And so I've talked a little bit about property tax as our primary source. Second primary source is sales tax. So we watch sales tax really carefully all year long. We've had many years over the last 10 that were like double-digit sales tax growth. We had a pretty good recovery after COVID. We're not so much in the double-digit growth anymore, but we still have steady growth. So we're projecting about 4% growth in sales tax and trying to be conservative but realistic about what we'll really collect. So again, we watch that really on a monthly basis throughout the year. So those are the two biggest revenue sources. Together they make up, I think, about 80%. On the expense side, this shows you by like account, so it's not the most helpful view, but really what it kind of shows is that salary and benefits is almost about 75%, 70% of the general fund. So 48 million in growth. Some of that kind of gets eaten up from the beginning. So I'll show you why or how that happens. So in the top section, public safety. Again, think about the 48 million. Almost 70% of that is taken up by public safety. So bottom two bullets, those are, I think you're aware that police and fire both do collective bargaining. So we negotiate with the Police Officers Association for police through the meet and confer process. And then fire has a similar process, collective bargaining. And as a result of that, we have contracts with those organizations. And part of those contracts is a schedule of pay increases. So these are the pay increases for fiscal year 26 that we're contractually obligated to pay our police and fire personnel. And then 20 million in EMS subsidy. This is what I mentioned earlier. So 26 will be our first full year of EMS. And EMS is going to be it's been set up as a special revenue fund. So it's not an enterprise fund, which is like a business where all the revenues pay for all the expenditures. That might be a good goal with EMS. We'd like to get it to that place, but right now the revenues that people pay for, ambulance services and stuff don't quite cover the expenses. So the new EMS budget's about $89 million, and the revenue's about $69 million. And so the $20 million gap is being provided by the general fund as a subsidy. You'll see the EMS budget on a later slide, but that's what the EMS subsidy means. A couple of workforce items, pay for performance. The city does a pay for performance program for employees. We don't do across the board raises, and we don't do like COLA or market raises. So this is the mechanism by which employees can get a raise if their performance is up to par. The employees can get a range between nothing and like 6 or 7%. And this is about what that averages to year over year. I mentioned the pay study and that kind of bucket that we set aside for, beginning to implement some of the findings from the pay study, which again, we expect in like April. And then $4.6 million, that's PayGo. So once we get the values from the appraisal districts, we have to balance and say, if we want PayGo to be that 7.25% part of the tax rate, what is that number? And so this is the gap to push more money over to PayGo. So if you do quick math, that actually adds up to more than $48 million. So that means that we also did budget cuts. So I mentioned the 1% reduction, the 3% reduction. And we can talk more about that if you like. So that's the general fund. A couple more slides. Enterprise funds, I mentioned, these operate more like businesses where the fees, like the user-based fees, pay for the expenses of the business or the line of service. So the biggest of these that we have is water and wastewater. So you'll see their number there at about 9% growth. Water is not just a city service, it's a regional utility. They're keeping up with growth, lots of capital outlay for them in fiscal year 26 and big capital projects that you'll see on the CIP. You got a question? Mm-hmm.
I can wait till you get to
Okay, sounds good. And then water also has a number of contractual services that have stepped increases like buying water and buying chemicals and that kind of thing. Yes, ma'am.
There's a question afloat about where Fort Worth will be getting their water from with all of the growth and everything. I remember 10 or 15, maybe more years ago, there was a pipeline project from, Richland Chambers or something? Is that helping, or do we need to seek more?
So ultimately, we'll have to seek more. I think currently that's the integrated pipeline project between TRWD and the Dallas Water Utility, and I think also the North Texas Water Group. And I think it's moving water from, is it Lake Fort? Richland Chambers. But from Fort to Chambers, right?
It's from Richland Chambers up to Fort Worth.
So it's bringing more water from our East Texas lakes. But ultimately, and I think as our growth is going, we have enough water through like 2080, I believe, unless our growth slows down some. But we're going to need additional water. So you probably heard about the Marvin Nichols Reservoir, and that's been a big lawsuit and those kind of things that creating another lake in Northeast Texas to help water come to the whole DFW region. But there's a lawsuit, I think it just got settled, where I think Toledo Bend, is that where the lawsuit? I think there's another lake that already exists, taking water from there and moving that through a pipeline. The thing is, every time you go further around, even some of the existing lakes, those pipelines are expensive, and the operating is expensive because you have to pump it up to get it to a higher elevation. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. But the lawsuits, the people that live in that part of the world don't want DFW to get water from them, and they don't want their area flooded. So it all through the courts, it got settled. So that's where it is right now. But we're good for a while, at least for 50 years or so.
I was wondering the question on the municipal airport, is that majority going to Meacham? Or like what's the airports, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are 3. So Meacham, Spinks, and Perot Field. Do you want to hear more?
Yeah, I guess what's like how much goes to, like who gets most of that?
You can do the break.
I think that's just straight operations at the airport. So the funding, it's like staff and maintenance and keeping the airport, the airport running, those kind of things.
At all 3, you said?
Yes, Spinks, Perot Alliance, and Meacham. So
Gotcha. And-
it's
and then
city employees that are working out there. It's contracts to, fix pavement. It's all those kind of things.
Gotcha. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out of that pie, which services go to, what percentage goes to the Perot one, to the Meacham one? Do we know that by chance?
I think Spinks is the smallest because it's a general aviation and it has a less traffic. So I would imagine maybe 15%, and then the other two are probably about halfway. They're about even because of the amount of traffic at each.
Gotcha.
It's about the same.
And I'm understanding that Perot is predominantly business fleet, like they're doing a lot of stuff economically. Or what's the Perot? What's the
Perot's there's a lot of cargo because you got like FedEx that's located there, and you got Amazon that's located there, and then you got several more larger companies that are located. They're not on the airport, located close because of the airport, and then Meacham is more of a general aviation, where business folks are flying in and out.
So like people who have personal planes?
At all three, they're all, because it's general aviation. If you take out the ones that hauling goods, every other is a personal plane owned by somebody.
At the Meacham one we're talking about specifically?
Well, all three. Spinks is 100%, individually owned airplanes going in and out.
And then Meacham is how much cargo, how much individuals flying in and out?
Yeah, it's very, very little cargo. It's very little cargo. It's primarily just private planes going in and out for different reasons.
So okay. So it sounds like
there's also at Meacham there's two facilities that like they finish out planes. So people fly in a plane, sits there for 6 months, and they redo it and paint it and all that.
Yeah.
So there's different types of work that happen at all these.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out resources going to people who could afford to fly in and out of airports.
All those dollars are generated by them.
Yeah.
These are no tax dollars in the airport.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. So all of these funds you see here are like generated by the users. Oh, yep.
Actually, I have two more questions.
Oh, you're coming.
I won't take up all the time. Okay. So I got a postcard in the mail yesterday or the day before from some company who wants me to come have dinner at Del Fresco's and talk about EMS pay ahead kind of program. Is that anything associated with you guys?
I'm not aware of that at all. No. Yeah.
No, it's not.
Not us.
It's not associated with cities. Probably some private company trying to sell you an insurance.
Not associated with the city. Probably some private company.
So where is the comprehensive plan available? Where can I go get a copy and look at it?
The current comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Yes, the current comprehensive plan is available on the website. You can find it when you go to the city's website. If you navigate to the Fort Worth lab as a department, it's there. Say again? Oh, or you can just search comprehensive plan in the search box. That should bring it up as well. And that's the 2023 comp plan. That's the last time it was updated. So we're in the middle of an update now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In previous years' budget planning meetings, we had the golf courses as its own budget line. Are we now including that in Parks and Rec? And as us here in 11 who live near Meadowbrook, having watched Meadowbrook go through its transformation. I see it now.
Yes.
I apologize.
That's okay. No, you're good. You're ahead.
Can
That's
we?
good.
Yeah. Can we talk about that?
We can't. Yes, we can. Okay. Another question on enterprise. Oh, two more questions. Okay.
Previously, whenever the ambulance service was under MedStar, they offered the Star Saver program. Is the city going to offer that as well?
I think it's under evaluation. Oh, here comes William. Okay. Unless there's not more of an answer, then we're evaluating.
We are considering it. This transition is very new. And one of the things that we want to do, if you notice that $20 million subsidy from the general fund, is we want to look at all opportunities to minimize the impacts on the general fund by generating more revenue out of the operation itself. And so we are evaluating whether or not we're going to continue that and a couple of other programs that we'll be looking at over the next year.
Can I just kind of chime in on that? So, okay, so what was it? 40 years ago, the fire department ran the ambulance service. Was it 40 years ago, 30 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood? Now we're back again with the city running the program, and like Mike said, we did have an ambulance program. That was the focus of my question is, you know, here's somebody coming in saying that we have an ambulance service pick up and drop off policy for you. I'm sure that's what the conversation is going to be. The event is not until next week sometime. Mm-hmm. But, you know, how are you associated, and will you implement similarly?
We are not associated with those folks, whoever they are. But I should probably go to that meeting with you, just see what they're talking about. I'm serious.
Okay, because see, that's why I wanted to go, was just to hear what they had to say. I have 2 tickets. I'll be happy to make reservations.
Yes, ma'am. Let's connect. However, as I said earlier, we will be evaluating whether or not we're going to continue that, and other programs that we're looking at to help alleviate the impact on the general fund.
I'd like to go to, I'd like my steak medium rare, please. Just a quick question back several slides ago where it had kind of the laundry list of the general fund and a lot of other categories below that. Mm-hmm. I'm just not sure. Yeah, the last one there, fiduciary. I just don't know what that is. Can you enlighten me?
Yes, but I'd like someone else to talk about it. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. We sure do. Fiduciary. Would you like to talk about fiduciary? No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, fiduciary is a retiree health care service. So all the city's retirees, since Fort Worth has its own pension, has its own retirement packages, and its own health care, it's all caught in that line item there.
I feel ashamed that I didn't remember that. Thank you for humbling me today.
Okay, I got to run, so I have one more question. And first of all, let me thank everyone, and I appreciate your indulging me. Most of you who know that I got a big mouth and I don't ever stop. So, you're welcome. You're welcome. So the last question I have at this point has to do with environmental concerns. I am a part of a coalition of neighborhoods and communities that are working to get an environmental plan included in the comp plan. And I know I've attended a focus group, and I just want to know that we are going to continue that process across the city, and we are going to include all neighborhoods, because it's not just the big things. It's not the gas wells or fracking or whatever. It's the illegal dumping and the people with all these cars in their backyards that are causing that stuff leaches into the ground. There's my man. You can take it from here.
Oh, absolutely. So I would encourage everyone who's a part of the conversations about the comprehensive plan with respect to land use and zoning. All of those things are really critical as we continue to grow and grow and grow and look to that 2050 year. And all those factors do need to be plugged into that plan, and all of those other plans related to that. But in the meantime, if you have an issue, if you have a property, please reach out through the My Fort Worth app or to the call center. Reach out to our office. Again, Cody Wittenberg, Environmental Services. Happy to take care of those with you and help to solve those problems. Okay. Thank you, Reba.
We appreciate you. Want to keep going? Okay. Special revenue funds. Most of you are familiar with the biggest of these. So the Crime Control and Prevention District, that's a special revenue fund. These funds are are funds that they don't sustain themselves like the enterprise funds, more like a business, but they do have dedicated source of revenue. So for crime control and prevention district, these revenues are restricted, half-cent sales tax voted on every 5 years and most recently every 10 years. Half-cent creates the revenue for the CCPD, okay? And the CCPD Board of Directors is the city council, and so their budget process goes alongside the city's budget process. So recommended budget there for next year with about 2.6% growth. Again, we're adding NPOs in CCPD and SROs. Those are both CCPD related programs. The next kind of group of funds that's rolled up here is public events. That's a group of funds that all have to do with culture and tourism, primarily funded by hot tax, a hotel occupancy tax, as well as some revenue sharing for airport parking, I think. Yes. And so their budget growth here is related to capital projects. Again, Will Rogers, and then on the capital plan, you see the convention center expansion happening in fiscal year 26 too. And then the last one I'll highlight, oh wait, I think we have a golf question, but before that, EMS, again, no history in fiscal year 25 because they're new in fiscal year 26, but you'll see that $89.2 million budget kind of popping up in fiscal year 26. They're covering about 69 million of that 89 with their fees and charges for service, and then the general fund sending that other 20 to balance that fund. You'll remember that from a few moments ago. Sorry, I keep on like handing away my mic.
You're fast with that mic. I have a CCPD question.
Okay.
I have a few. Within the CCPD, is there a gang prevention allotted for that? And also for mental health? And also the third for the NPOs, you're adding more NPOs. Is all the neighborhoods getting a specific amount, or in more high crime, there will be more NPOs added?
All those?
Sure. Is that it? All three?
Yeah.
All right. Yes. CCPD funding does do some gang intervention and prevention. What was your second one?
And how much is that?
That I don't know. I could get that information for you, though. I don't know the dollar amount off the top of my head.
Okay. And also the mental health.
So the mental health, I mean, we have our CIT program, which is funded through CCPD. With our CIT, the Crisis Intervention Team, we have mental health liaisons, which are with Tarrant County MHMR that rides with our crisis intervention team. So yes, we do have mental health services. We also have services not only externally to the public, but also internally for our department. So we have some CCPD funding that helps with the mental health of our officers and provides those resources for them as well. And so your question about the MPOs, we have 112 beats in the city of Fort Worth. Whenever we add these 8 MPOs, then yes, we will have 1 MPO for every beat in the city.
And this is just a suggestion. A lot of times, I'm vice president of Poly Heights Neighborhood Association. When we find out about a new NPO when we call. Mm-hmm. There's not a courtesy where the old one has left. We have to find out.
Sure.
And again, neighborhood associations, we don't get paid a penny. And to know these funds are here, it's time that these dollars are spent toward the citizens is benefiting from it. Also, I could never get a firm schedule from the NPOs, and we had different ones. Crime never stops.
Yes.
They just said, oh, call us when you need us. Mm-hmm. Well, when we'd call after 8 p.m., 10, 12, they'd send us to the main number. The point of an NPO is just that, a neighborhood police officer. Those guys know the people, know the citizens. When you get somebody from downtown, they don't know us. So we could take a bad situation and make it worse. But if you've got your NPO there that knows you, knows the community, they have an overall familiarity with it. So I would like to see a schedule of the NPOs.
So that's such a great question. So if I could pay them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would, right? And so really it just comes down to, I have to be able to manage their schedule as best as I can that's going to benefit the community. When is the community awake? During the daytime, during the early evening time. We have several of our MPOs that adjust their hours to midnight hours whenever they're addressing certain problems. And so to give you a definitive schedule of our MPOs, it's very challenging because it depends on the beat. It depends on the issues in that beat. Because I call them my Swiss Army knife. When I have a problem, I ask the MPO to take care of it. Whenever you look at a patrol officer, think of them as a paramedic that's out there trying to triage the situation. They're just trying to get that thing calmed down so they can go on to the next call. The MPO is like the doctor. The MPO is going to come in after the fact for those long-term issues going on in the neighborhood to try and address them so they don't continue to reoccur. And so that's why the MPO is so important, because they do know you. But they can't handle every problem 24 hours a day. It's unreasonable for us to get them to do that. For them going out, for them transitioning out or going to another assignment, yes, we probably should do a better job working with the neighborhood associations to introduce the new one as the old one's outgoing, and that's on us. We can do much better in that arena. I agree with you with that. Okay.
There's another part to his question, and that was each neighborhood, whenever money is being sent out, whenever money is being sent out to so much for the neighborhoods or whatever for the crime, is it a bulk amount, an equal amount to every neighborhood, or however it's being done, or district as far as the police beats and stuff go, or is it based on the number of crimes, such as the 3200 block of East Lancaster? We need help. You can have downtown and it's looking okay. Are they going to get the same amount of money as what 3200 East Lancaster is going to get whenever we have a great crime problem right there?
So everything's dependent, right? So every division has what we call strategic operation funds, which are in CCPD. Those are overtime funds that we can use to address problems like 3200 East Lancaster or other areas within the city, because we have Miller and Barry, we have Las Vegas Trail Calmont, we have a multitude of places around the city that need our assistance. And so whenever you're talking about, can I tell you every district, every division gets exactly the same amount of money? No, because it depends on the problems that we're trying to address. And so 4th of July to me is one of the biggest, things that we can talk about, because 3rd of July, guess where we spend a lot of our time and our money? In Como, because they have this great festival that goes on over there, but they need our presence over there because of issues that have happened in the past. When you get to 4th of July, the fireworks, Cindy has worked with us very well on some of the fireworks prevention efforts that we've had, but we also spent a lot of money in the Miller corridor to make sure we had the presence out there to try and minimize some of those issues that are going on. So, I mean, we could break it down and I could tell you how much, pretty much every division gets, but the SOF funds are pretty much distributed fairly equally across all the divisions. And so those are at the commander's discretion to use to address some of those. And there are other overtime funds within CCPD that they can use as well. So, I mean, every problem is different, right? Sometimes we use CIT, sometimes we use the HOPE team, sometimes we use the MPOs, but those are all CCPD funded endeavors. And so it just depends on where the problem is at.
I have a question for others, but since you're up here, I'd love to
I
just love to ask one simple question on,
Sure.
if I pay $1 in taxes for the city, how much of that dollar goes to police?
It's a half-cent sales tax, half cent.
No, I just mean like all of, not just the CCPT, how much does all my dollars?
That's a bigger budget question.
Well, in the general fund, it would be, is it 50 cents? I think that might be police and fire.
So like every
So
dollar.
of your dollar, then it might be like 35 cents or something in the general fund,
And then another, this CCPD.
which is sales tax generated. Yep.
Yep.
You got it.
Cool. So then the environmental protection one here,
Yeah.
I was wondering, it's cool to see the lady who just left probably would have liked to see that it went up.
Uh-huh.
But what environment are we protecting here? Where does that go? Who's that to?
Sure. I'll let Cody talk about it.
That's okay, perfect. So for this particular increase, we're actually working to increase our Upspire crews with this increase if the budget passes in a couple of weeks, and we're hoping that they will be able to focus on cleaning up illegal campsites. Our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, sometimes when they leave behind their tents and other things, it's a lot of work to get that picked up. So we're hoping that we can also leverage that opportunity to bring 5 additional crews on through Upspire, and then look at our fleet and our capital and some long-range planning as well.
Thank you. You have a question?
So just to follow up on environmental,
Yes.
what are the plans for the city to increase revenue from industrial violators that are happening within the city? Because especially what was mentioned in Echo Heights and what has happened in other communities, it feels like the city's pretty lax on trying to address these violators who should be producing revenue and also reducing their impact.
Absolutely. So I'll give you the high level version. If we have some specific examples, we can talk offline after the meeting, okay? So anytime that there is an industrial violation that is from an environmental perspective, either the city or the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, one of those two groups is going to go forward and process that. But we don't want to get into a sense of where it's double jeopardy or some sort of sense like that. Many of those cases, there are violations against state regulations, and the state enforcement, TCQ enforcement, goes in to process those. And again, we can talk about any case and all the details because it does get pretty nuanced from there. Okay.
Use FedEx as the latest example.
Okay.
Use FedEx as one example of where the city did not address this issue
Sure.
for a number of years. What are you doing in response to that so that the FedExes and others cannot perpetuate those violations and the city actually is able to hold them responsible and accountable?
Absolutely. So with respect to that, where it's in this case a conditional use permit and those zoning violations have occurred, we have to work very closely with our planning team and our development services team. But certainly if you see a violation, bring it forward to us. With our in July, the commercial code enforcement actually moved from code compliance into environmental services to kind of tie those two strategies together. I think that will help us as well. But again, if you see something, bring it forward. And we're also watching for violations as well. Okay.
That wasn't an answer.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to dive deeper if I miss something. Okay. Thank you. What you got?
Hi. We're an hour in, and I submitted questions in advance. I don't know how long the presentation is, but are you going to have time to, or
Yes,
should I
well-
just interject? Because I'm a little confused about the process since we were supposed to write questions.
Yes. Either way is fine. We will have time at the end if you would like to save. We have a couple more slides to go. Ready to keep going?
Yep. So, are you going to do you have the golf question? Yeah. I guess so I was actually at District 4 meeting where this is how it was as well. So, but I guess I'm trying to understand, is the revenue from the golfing and the airports, like how much of that is to subsidize those functions to exist? You know, as a 36-year-old, new house buying resident of the area, I see a bunch of stuff that makes sense. Crime, trees, environments, emergency. And the last two I see municipal airports where two of the three are private, like it's not doing economic aviation to help people. It's individuals with planes getting around. And then, I'm not against subsidizing golfing and all that as well. I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to figure out, like, how does that create revenue? Does it create revenue for the city so that we have more taxes for other things? I just would like to understand those amenities and privileges that people who golf and fly get from the city.
Sure.
So golf and aviation specifically, those items or those functions are paid by the users. So there's no tax dollars, there's no subsidy from. Let me finish. I heard your question. So there's no subsidy or anything else. What they do provide an economic impact to the city as a whole. So every time somebody goes to pay for golf, they pay taxes, right? Every time they go and buy golf balls, wherever they buy them, if they buy them hopefully in Fort Worth. At the aviation side, you take the three airports, there's probably 5,000, 6,000 jobs at the airports that our citizens are maintaining their families off of, right? Every time somebody orders Amazon, the planes land, the planes pay for fees that actually cover the cost of the airport. So it's a whole economic impact that benefit the city that would actually keep our taxes lower because we're collecting sales tax revenues and other revenues that don't have to be done by the general fund and property taxes.
And I guess what I'm asking, so I was at District 4 meeting and there was a couple of ladies giving me a hard time about, it was like $11 million spent on nonprofits.
Right. Well, people give us depending where you are and who it is. It's
This is $8 million for golf. We get for golfing, and we also get from the municipal airports. You said two of the three were mainly private aviation. I guess I'm trying to ask.
All three are pretty much private.
All private planes showing up, not cargo planes. Two of them are mainly private
Right.
flights. I'm just asking airport, 16, so we have 16 and 8. Of that 24, how much of that is to manage then those same sort of, like the golfing sites, the airport, for those people?
All the there's no tax dollars in there. All those costs come. So if golf didn't exist, there would be zero expenditures, because we wouldn't get any of those dollars to run the golf department. If the airports didn't exist, it would be zero expenditures, because the city does not put any tax dollars, it does not subsidize those whatsoever with other funds.
Jay, how much revenue does the city get from those 3 municipal golf courses? I mean, 3 municipal airports?
Well,
I'm trying to make sure that revenue is just not expensing, like, because I'm seeing golf course, I live by Meadowbrook Golf Course.
Right.
They just got a big construction. I'm just not, like, we're not building revenue to then serve the service. That's all I was asking around it. I'm not saying.
I don't understand by building the revenue. No, so the 16 million, wherever it is, the golf, the 7, now going to be 9.2 million. The reason it's going up is because Meadowbrook's opening back up. It went down when Meadowbrook closed, because we weren't collecting the rates. We weren't collecting the dollars off of that. Now that it's going to come up, that's how much more revenue is going to be generated by Meadowbrook being open. And those dollars that get generated, they're called special revenues, because you can only use the dollars back into that function. We don't take golf dollars and go put them, somewhere else. You can't take, it's under state law, you can't take the aviation dollars and go and put them somewhere else. They can only be used for those functions.
So then the 9 million is going back to golfing, and the 16 million is going back to 3 airports. 2 of the 3 is for.
To pay for operations, the people that work there, the costs, putting down fertilizer, mowing, all those kind of things.
It just feels like those dollars aren't going to the people that we're creating new revenue for. It's just going back to the user. Based on what I just said.
It's not going to the user at all. It's going back to maintain the right. No, but to maintain the actual golf courses, you have to maintain them. That's what it costs. So somebody can play golf, right? And then.
But you're subsidizing. That would be a private service if we weren't doing it.
The city's owned golf courses since 1930s, right?
Saying that this is a mindset thing. I'm not against it again.
Right.
I like my medical golf course.
Right. No, I'm trying to understand what the.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we are taking revenue from these places and then providing them back to those places, which what I'm saying, those are revenues that can be used.
No, they wouldn't exist. They wouldn't exist if we didn't have the golf course.
If it was a private-owned golf course, correct. To be able to get services for the city. We're subsidizing rich people's services. We're providing rich services.
So about 40% of the golf courses have closed that were private in the last 20 years. So.
But I think that's the whole thing. I don't get one for basketball. I don't get one for hockey. I know, but you understand that golf course.
But you do get community centers with basketball courts. So yes, ma'am.
I'll just go ahead and ask my question because I submitted in advance and I'm not clear if we're going to get there. I have a TPW question, with the Southeast Connector and all the things that are going on in Hanley. 3 of our bridges were removed and we have a lot of construction. How can the city help and support us through TPW? Because TPW is also doing construction in the exact same area as the Southeast Connector, which makes our homes kind of inaccessible right now. They're rerouting, they're detouring. Are there funds in the budget to help support expediting our access to our homes during Southeast Connector and these extensive renovations?
I don't know that there's funds specifically for that purpose, but I think, is Elaine here?
I'm here.
Yeah, but what I was going to say, if afterwards, that's a really specific question. So I thought if you could get with Lane so you can get your information and she could provide.
Yeah, hi. I'm in TPW. We also have another person here from TPW. Patricia right over there. She had her hand up. So I think if you probably should get with Patricia after the meeting, and she can get you the information that you need specifically at
Patricia,
that
she needs to
location.
leave, so can you talk to her now? In a few minutes.
Yes, I know you started off with 1% being deducted, and then 3% depending on how the taxes go. I did that at the beginning part. What I would like to know is if it goes under, what gets cut, and if it goes over, what gets added to the budget, or which department gets more or gets less, depending on how the taxes go at the end.
Right. So you're right. All these are estimates, right?
Yeah.
So as we go through the year, we manage the budget. We look at revenue, see what they're doing, all those kind of things. Primarily the pay-go money, right? Because that's kind of contractual money that we use to do capital maintenance. So if the year's going, if all of a sudden the economy goes in the toilet and revenues slow down big time, and we're going to have $20 million shortfall, that pay-go money in all the departments is basically cash that we can put a halt to those projects so that we can balance the budget. On the other side, if revenues come in above, or looking like they're going to come in above toward the end of the year, we go to the city council with recommendations of these are additional things that we could do. And typically, because it's 1 year money, right? It's not guaranteed every year. So we typically recommend that they go toward capital projects. And lots of times it goes to capital projects that were, say, the 22 bond program, right? And because of inflation, and because when the project got designed, they found there was a gas line down there, and so now it's got short $2 million. Typically, we recommend those dollars to go to projects, one-time projects that fill those gaps so those projects can move forward. So that's how we typically do it.
I have two questions. One regarding our mental health, the HOPE team, and then our emergency medical services that we've had to add. Real quickly, our HOPE team operating hours are what?
So we have 2 teams of the HOPE team, but we are carrying vacancies, right? So the majority of our HOPE teams working the day shift hours right now, but as soon as they get fully staffed, they're going to go into the evening hours till 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, so nothing overnight.
No, nothing in the extreme overnights.
Okay, and have we already accounted for those positions?
Do I now? I'm sorry.
Have we already accounted for those positions in the budget?
Oh yeah, we already have them funded. Yeah, it's just we have vacancies within our department. And so we're supposed to be, we're on goal to be fully staffed by September of 2026, which means those positions by next year will be funded and full. So yeah.
Okay. My second question is, as an emergency room nurse myself for the last decade, emergency rooms do not make money. They cost the hospital a ton of money. And so we took on EMS, which we probably should have, because MedStar was not operating well, we know that. So what is our policy? Do we have a policy advisory board that addresses things that incur so much cost, such as simple lift assistance at home, simple travel back to home for elderly populations or differently able populations, or whatever the case is, for people who cannot fund themselves to get rides home? Are there any policies being built in place to offset those expenditures that will come no matter what? And I know that just from my experience in having to assist people in trying to get home who don't qualify for EMS services, because under CCMS, they have to have certain medical conditions to get an ambulance transport back home. So I'd like to understand fully our mindset and our policy behind what we're going to do to offset the substantial cost, which I think is important for us to take because we need to take care of our people. But what are we doing to be thoughtful and intentional about the cost that will incur to our budget?
Okay. With regards to the cost of the EMS service, the reason it's a special revenue fund is because going into this, we understood that we're not covering the cost of the service. We talked a little bit earlier about a focus on trying to alleviate the impact on the general fund. That $20 million is taxpayer dollars that's going to provide services for all the shortcomings that we'll have when you deliver Medicaid and Medicare services. You don't get the full recovery. There's not a model out there right now that gets full reimbursement for EMS services. So we are focused on trying to find ways to reduce the impact on the general fund. Obviously, we would love to see that impact be zero, but I don't think that's realistic. And if anybody knows of a model where that is happening, we'd like to go and learn about what they're doing, because we'd like to try to do that too. But at this point, we know there's going to be an ongoing subsidy. Our challenge is to minimize that subsidy that's hitting the general fund.
So we could let Christiane get through the rest of the slides and then have all the questions at the end.
Well, this is,
I think, go ahead.
Closely related to what we're talking about, if that's okay. I think it'll be quick. One of the things that we enjoy, a wealth of museums in the city of Fort Worth, and they bring great things, quality of life, economic development, all that. Tourists, thank you, and they spend money, all that good stuff. Sales tax comes from it, et cetera. But I'm curious specifically and I'm a big supporter of museums, but I'm just curious, does the city itself, I'll use the term subsidize, any of our museums within the city limits?
Not that I'm aware of. Do we provide is it one-time dollars that we provided the museum of? Yeah, the community partnership. So the museums that are located in city buildings or on city property, if they have we have a fund called community partnerships. If they have a capital project, for instance, and they want to, it's not a museum, but Casa Mañana, for instance, that's a city facility. When they built the Reed Cabaret, the first piece of that, it was about $750,000. They came to the city and they said, we're going to raise $500,000. Could the city participate in this? And through the community partnership deal, the city, they ended up getting like the $250,000 to do that project. So that it's about $500,000 on an annual basis, and it's typically small things, small projects like that. That's about it. And it's always a partnership, so it's not just the city money. So, if Christiane can.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So just a few slides left. This is one that people have been interested in as we've shown it out in these meetings. So this is sort of a taxpayer impact statement, if you will. And it's an estimate based on the average taxable home value that's sort of a blend of our appraisal districts. In the top row there, that $235,000, that already has a homestead exemption applied. So if it looks a little low, that might be why, but some people have asked about that. So that is considering a taxable average with a homestead exemption and then applying the 67-cent tax rate. And so you'll see that because if you live in a residential property with a homestead exemption, you did not get reappraised this year based on that TAD change. And so your tax bill would go down as far as the city's portion goes by about $20 a year. And then the bottom section is the fees, which we've talked about sort of in the preceding slides, water, wastewater, stormwater, we didn't touch too much on. I think we kind of skipped solid waste with some of the environmental questions. They haven't had a fee increase since 2002 or 3. And so as we look toward the end of life for the landfill, as well as sustainability of the solid waste service, our contractual obligations with waste management, they're recommending a fee increase there. And then we did talk about the environmental fee a bit and some of what you would gain there. And so your $20 a year tax savings, and then the offsetting charges from the recommended fee increases, the average in this scenario resident would see about a $3 a month increase on the water bill. I mean, it's not really on the water bill because it's offsetting against the property tax bill. $4.75 on the water bill, offset by $1.69 off your tax bill. That's on a monthly basis. And so that was by design, as we knew we needed to look at some fees, their structures, sustainability of each of those services, and then choosing to reduce the tax rate for that offset. Okay. As we do the operating budget, we also do a capital budget. So we look at big projects on a 5-year rolling basis. So this is just a snapshot of sort of what that looks like going forward for those interested. In fiscal year 26, the capital plan is about 1.4 billion, and that's spread across all the different city functions and departments. So water has the biggest capital plan at $601 million, and then you'll see that big bump for public events. That's the convention center expansion. Fiscal year 26 is the big move on that one. And then you'll see it tapers off a bit in the out years. But as we talk about the 2026 bond, if that passes in its, if you pass the bond, right, in May of next year, then those numbers will also get folded in here. So total over the next 5 years, the capital plan, which is again a plan that we update every year, 3.9 billion. I really am actually almost done. I think this is the last numbers slide. This is PAYGO. We've talked about PAYGO a bunch of times today. The point, I know it's a little small, the point of this slide is to show kind of the year-over-year comparison. So in the blue or the darker bar is this year's PAYGO budget. And this, again, is revenue that's generated by the property tax. And there's a couple different city departments that benefit. The biggest is TPW, Transportation and Public Works. They have the biggest portion. And so you'll see the dark blue is this year's budget. The green is next year's budget. So TPW capturing most of the PAYGO growth, primarily directed towards street maintenance. And then Parks is the other one that's capturing a little bit more than the share of the rest. We gave them some extra resources for park maintenance. And then down at the very bottom, there's community partnerships, which Jay just mentioned about with the museum question. So this is budget growth, 25 to 26, 3.6 billion across operating and capital to 4.5 billion, reflective of the rapidly growing city. We are doing these meetings all over the city. I think we're halfway done maybe. We have 5 and 9 coming up in the next couple of days. So you're more than welcome to direct people there. Come again yourself. And then this is all leading up to budget and tax rate public hearings on September 16th. And then we'll ask council to take action on the budget. And that's the end of the presentation, and we can take more questions now. All right.
Jay, back to aviation and golf course. First, for y'all to know, I'm Cindy Bowling. I'm president of Central Meadowbrook. Okay, and make sure I understand. Revenue from aviation and golf. The revenue is generated by what the airports pay to exist in fees, sales tax, whatever.
What? No.
That revenue okay.
The revenues for aviation, for instance, are user fees. So every time a plane lands on the airport, they pay a landing fee. Every time they take off, they pay a runway use fee. Every time they fill up with diesel fuel or whatever fuel they use there at the airport, they pay that cost, and then fees are collected on top of that. Plus
they pay the cost to us, Fort Worth.
Do that, and it goes into that fund to run the actual operations of the airport.
So they fund those fees. Let me just call it fees.
Right.
Those fees that are paid to Fort Worth fund the money
the operation
that is used by Fort Worth to keep the operations going for them.
Correct.
Okay. And on that basis,
just also so everybody knows, like you saw the capital said aviation, that the FAA, all airports, runways are public. The FAA provides those dollars. So that $27 million this year is a redo of the Meacham Airport. Primarily, it's like a $22 million project of resurfacing of the Meacham runway.
But you're going way beyond my question.
Right, but I'm saying that's federal money coming in to pay for that, but we run the operations.
Got it. So revenue comes in, and that revenue is used to keep the operations on a city level. I'm not paying anything to do that. But how much revenue do you think the city of Fort Worth gets just from the people flying in for the stock show and staying downtown at the hotels, or flying in for whatever activity, or just the fact that we have these airports in such close proximity to our city for rich people to fly in and spend time in our city. How much do you think that brings into our city alone?
Well, it's a huge economic impact to
Yeah.
the community
That's
overall.
that's the term have been missing.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's, like I said, 5, 6, 7,000 jobs connected with the airports that people work at these facilities on the airport, that if we didn't have the airport, those jobs wouldn't exist.
But beyond the jobs, the people coming in
Right, that's
town.
spending money, but the people
bunch.
but our citizens are also spending money, right, and paying
right.
taxes and all the like. So.
And on the golf course, I understand that, and of course, Meadowbrook is just the fact that it's reopening. My gosh, the impact on our neighborhood alone. The safety. Our MPO was telling Kyle McClure the other night, if you have any problems, connect with me and make sure, our MPO. But the revenue, the last time I was there for the ribbon cutting before the construction, the whole place was filled with people from out of town coming to play at the Meadowbrook Golf Course. As far away as Waco. And I'm like, do y'all come here? And yeah, from Waco. So again, there's more revenue. I don't know how much the fees are going up, but the golf course alone to our neighborhood and to the east side and to the image and the improvement without me having to pay a dime for it.
Right.
That's where I go.
When I think the golf program is just part of our overall recreational program for the city, like soccer fields, like basketball courts in the municipal. It's all part of the recreational, like the tennis courts. It's just part of the overall city's recreational program.
So I got a couple of questions. I think I saw on fees, the revenue is like 6-7 million. If I'm looking at that correctly, if I remember that slide correctly, that fees revenue was coming in. My question with that is there a list of fees that can be charged to City of Fort Worth residents that we can see, and how much revenue is coming in from those different fees?
We have the list of all the fees. So I think what you're talking about in the general fund, that's primarily development fees that are paid by developers or somebody that's building something. They have to have their plans examined, the examination fees and all those kind of things.
Yeah, so if it's not for the general fund, if there's fees and other funds for other things, can we see a full listing of those fees and what revenue's coming?
They're all available.
Because my concern is that with fees, it can disproportionately impact lower income community members versus us having taxes against folks who have more property or more.
And that's one of the reasons on trying to balance the tax rate.
So I would like to see that. The other thing I would like to see, so I got like 3 things. I'm just going to bucket these things. I don't expect full answers, but I would just like to know to get access to it. How many positions were not filled in this last budget cycle that took up space on our budget that we never filled? And I would like to know how many of those positions have been on the budget longer than a year that have not been filled. So I'd be curious.
We can provide you that information.
Be curious.
One of the
about that.
reasons we're doing that market study is because we have hard to fill positions because we don't pay enough. And so that's why we're doing the market study. And if we can get those aligned correctly, then we can there's a lot of, like engineers, for instance, that's a really tough one.
Yeah, there's a lot of insight that can come from that. Maybe we're not filling it because we're not paying enough. Maybe we're not filling it because it's a unique skill set or something. But it's
And
just
that was part of my
1%. What is the scope?
Right, the 1% cut. A lot of that 1% came from department. I let the departments choose where can you tighten the belt, and a lot of that led to the reduction in some of those positions that were there.
Jay, can I ask a question about
who's talking?
Right here.
I'm sorry.
The first portion of the budget, so council priorities. So how much of that money is to maintain the status quo? So being president of the Greater Meadowbrook Alliance,
right,
off of Lancaster, I see EMS at the same locations. I see code for 30 years, I'm told, at the same locations. So we're funding these sections to continue what they've been doing. How much of that budget is allocated to a vision to actually eliminate or solve for problems created by historic redlining, created by homelessness epidemics and drug issues and human trafficking and all the things that we have in the east side pretty heavily?
Right.
Is there consideration given to elimination or solving, or just the continuation of sending Cody's team out to the same place every week?
So a lot of it's status quo in trying to address that, right? So, but identifying one of the projects or one of the programs that I want to try to initiate, for instance, and I mentioned this to the council member, the issues on the east side on Lancaster at the motel there and that food store, for instance. So I am pulling together an internal team, the city, to try to put together a program on how we can address that. So in the next couple, I've only been here 7 months, back 7 months. So to try to put a program, and that's just one of the locations, right? There's a couple of food stores or not grocery stores, convenience stores on South Hemp Hill, for instance, that are a problem. There's one on North Main. There's a couple out on the west side. So they exist all over town. But I want to work with the law department to see what we can come up with, and it's going to take an effort of all. So everybody has their base jobs to do, right? It's going to take an effort from all the different departments to put together a program to put constant pressure on those bad actors, because those bad actors really create a lot of the issues that we have in different.
And so that'll be kind of included in all the work that will be part of this budget.
It's not part of the budget. It's something I'm going to bring forward to the city council and ask for additional dollars to do that with.
Okay.
Because we didn't have time to put it into the budget.
Yeah, I would like to make one comment about the golf courses and the airports. I would like to remind everybody that minorities were not allowed on private golf courses. Some were not allowed on private planes. But because we have these things available, I can play golf. I can fly on planes because of our tax dollars. So I'd like to remind everybody of that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carol Peters with West Meadowbrook Neighborhood Association. I have kind of a big picture question. The recent Texas legislative session passed at least 4 bills that would have an impact potential impact on revenue. 1 or 2 are about using commercial zoning for residential development. Commercial zoning throws off a whole lot more tax revenue than a residential development, unless it's extremely large and dense. So with that, on those 2 laws or 3 laws on the books, I can't remember how many exactly, what have you done to prepare for the impact on our budget? And what, if you have, and what strategy do you have?
So that's a good question, and not a lot of people know what the state's done to cities. So one of them that we know for sure, because it doesn't impact us in this coming year, is an exemption that was lifted that was on personal property taxes for businesses. So they used to get an exemption. The first $2,500 was exempted from property taxes. They lifted that to $125,000 in value. So that's going to have about an $8.5 million impact on our budget next year, not this year, but next year. So we are preparing to figure out how to do that. Part of the 1% tightening and the 3% is so that we can have a better understanding of the deal longer term with some of these impacts, right? The other piece that you mentioned, sure, some commercial, not all commercial, it depends. Some commercial is valued higher than residential. New residential, like an apartment complex, oftentimes has more value than a strip center, which is commercial, right? That new law basically allows a developer not to have to come in and rezone the property from commercial to multifamily. They can just come in and actually build by right multifamily on a commercial property. So if a property exists and it's zoned commercial and it doesn't have anything on it, it really doesn't have a lot of value because there's no buildings on it. So they would have to, once they build, it actually helps our budget because something's built on her. There's a lot of commercial property, zone property around the city that's vacant because the markets never come to be able to sustain a commercial activity there. So I'm not saying it's a good thing that necessarily the neighborhood's going to like having all that, but from just a strictly financial standpoint, a new apartment complex, a new multifamily project will have more value than just that vacant property. Now, if they're going in and tearing something down to put in multifamily, then there has to be some market reasoning behind that, and so at the end of the day, it would have more value. It all depends on the site, but it is. We know it's an impact to the citizens. The cities went down and testified at the hearings down there. We even had developers that didn't want this to happen because they knew the good developers. I'm not saying they're all bad, but some of the good developers, they know it's hard to get the trust of citizens when they want to rezone for things, and you're going to lose even more trust from citizens from that standpoint. We're trying to fight it at the state level, but they passed anyway.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up, but those bills also restrict impact fees too and other revenue ways to compensate the city. They don't allow for improvement in utilities or in kind of adjustments that the city usually makes for a large project. So I'm just concerned that long term this could have a really difficult impact.
Yeah, so we're studying all that. We have there is a couple of bills that actually we're going to even have more constraints on our overall revenue that were actually just this session that just ended, they didn't pass. And so it was like an unholy alliance of all the Democrats with the far right folks voted against it in the House, and it killed those bills because the far right didn't think it went far enough as far as lowering the amount of dollars collected at the local level. Councilwoman? Oh, that's right. So Tuesday at City Hall, we're having a town hall. The Development Services Department, it's pretty much all day to 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that staff can educate folks that want to come in about the bill specifically around zoning and development and what the impacts are to communities, but also the processes behind it.
It's not about the golf.
I have a question regarding Tarrant Appraisal District. And it's kind of a connection between the city's permitting system. Whenever we, in West Meadowbrook, Central Meadowbrook, there's a few of us that are constantly looking at properties where we see development taking place on a parcel. We report it because we don't see any permits on file, or we already know that things have taken place. We notify Tarrant Appraisal District that they need to reevaluate a certain property because the permits is what drives Tarrant Appraisal, and then of course the values of the taxes or the revenue is increased, and so the city's losing out on some revenues because of the permits not being obtained by persons who are doing development on their properties. It's kind of like whenever you have a vehicle and you're not registering a vehicle, your registration pays for roads and bridges and such. We're losing revenue because Tarrant Appraisal is not being fed the information through the permitting system, and in turn the city's not receiving the revenue from the taxes that should be being collected because that's not known. How does the city work over through those?
Well, we actually have, our development team actually has folks that drive around trying to find those, and then people report them. So if you report them to our development department, DJ Harrell's group, they'll actually go out and stop the work from happening until they pull the permits and put all that information.
There's a lot of disconnect with code enforcement and development.
Well, it's not so there's a difference. Code enforcement is a...
The things to code first, and then they go out and review the situation and say, yes, there is a violation. We can't order a stop work order, but development can. And there's where there's a breakdown somewhere.
So I'll get with Brian to make sure that code compliance, when they come out, that they're actually reporting it to development. Because development's the one that goes and stops the work. And I've seen it happen before. It's maybe not happening all the time.
That one. First comment to what Mike says, what he describes, Jay, is actually costing the city a whole lot more money because the situations are reported. And I'm segueing into my question. At least a year ago, I and others made the suggestion, because of these repeat offenders, commercial property, why in the world can't we charge them a fine or whatever you want to call it on a daily basis or at least a monthly basis in the thousands of dollars, not hundreds of dollars, as easily as we're someone who violates the trash cart rule about overfilling it, they get a $3 hickey on their water bill. Where are we in making that happen? Echo Motel, VNN, all these places that are constantly requiring city services on every single level. Why can't they be fined $1,000 a day to pay back the city for all these city services?
Probably state law. So
That's why, is it state law?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the whole lawsuit that we brought forward from a nuisance standpoint, and then they just make minimal changes, and then the judge says they've met the minimum requirements, and it gets dismissed. So that's what I'm talking about. I want to create a new program that starts off with 2 or 3 high nuisance areas, and that it's a constant thing. It's going to take money, but we got to put the program together. I want to make sure legally it's going to stand. They're not going to file a lawsuit, and then it all goes away. So it's going to take a little bit to put that program together, and then we'll be bringing that to the city council.
So there's 2 questions. There was a good breakdown about property owners and what they pay and where that money's going to. I thought that was really great. Can we get a version of that for commercial property tax and also for apartment buildings? Because I think as residents, it's really helpful if we understand what piece of the pie they're actually paying and whether that is a large enough piece of the pie based on their holdings and everything that they have. So that's my first question, to be able to see if there's a breakdown. The second question is this rainy day fund that we have, what is the process to access it? How much do we have in it? And how often are we updating the balance in that rainy day fund?
So are you talking about the fund balance?
Yeah,
The general
whatever
fund
our excess funds that we get that,
Right.
that
So-
we as a holding place.
So the general fund balance, we have a goal of getting it to 25% of what the general fund total dollars are. And that means we're trying to get to 3 months of operations. We talked about what happens if the revenues don't happen, right? If something really bad happens, we're trying to get to, right now we're at 22%. The goal is to get to 25%. That rainy day fund, general fund balance has a huge impact on the bond ratings that the city gets when we issue debt. And so right now depends on the bond rating agencies, we're AA or AA plus, basically across the board. To get to AAA so that the interest we pay even goes lower in the future, every AAA city is at 25% or more. So we 10, 15 years, before David Cook came, we were like 16.5%. Like that was 2 months. And so if something really bad happened, you'd be in a really bad situation as far as paying your bills. 'Cause just think about at your household, 3 months is not a lot of time, right? So the goal is to get it to 25%. I say that the only place I can go for this new program that I want to put together, and I don't know what it's going to cost, is ask the council to dip into that, because I think it's going to be worthwhile to do that. But all that to say, our goal is still to get it to 25%. This year we were at 22%, 22.1, and we're trying to keep it at that level with this budget.
Y'all provide insight to when it's going to get accessed, and if we wanted to see historically.
It's never. We typically don't spend money out of the fund balance. The last time we did was in the Great Recession, 2008, when the city in 1 year cut $65 million out of the budget, and the next year cut $75 million out of the budget. Those 2 years included about 25 million use of fund balance to balance the budgets, or else we'd have to cut more. So that was a horrible situation. If you recall, values went way down. You know, nobody was buying homes, all those kind of things, the mortgage industry issues. So.
The other question about the breakdown of commercial property and apartment.
Yeah. So what we showed you is typically in these meetings, it's homeowners want to know what the impact is, so that's why we showed that. So homeowners, especially, and if you don't have it, you need to do a homestead exemption if you own your home, right? So you can get that had the homestead exemption built into that value. Commercial properties don't have any of those type of exemptions. So, but we have, I believe in the budget, do we show what percentage of the overall general fund revenue comes from commercial versus residential? Yeah, well, and there's a presentation online, and there's also the whole budget's online that's being proposed. you can find it in there as well.
Okay, you ready? So I have two questions. The population obviously was different in the 70s. So why are the local libraries that was built Psalm 67 in the 70s still the same size? We as a city can and need to do better. I have a laptop, I have an iPad, but not everybody has that. I've gone to the library on a regular basis just to observe the residents use it. A lot of them are going there to hunt, to look for jobs, to do resumes, and then they got to sign in on a paper to wait. We're one of the fastest growing cities, but when you look at a lot of the libraries, we're behind the times. And I've seen them, they'll paint a wall or they'll put something new. They need to tear that sucker down and build something for the residents of today. Also, water parks. I'm active in the community. A lot of my people in the neighborhood, they go to NRH2O. Guess what? That's in North Richland Hills. We need that, but the city of Fort Worth has shut down all of the parks but one. The pandemic should have taught us a lesson to where we can utilize much better, we can do better. We need to start opening up the swimming pools. I was told they were old. I cut one of the attorney's hair back in the day. He said, Christopher, it was costing us money. You have a refrigerator from the 30s, it's gonna cost you more, you get a new one. I told him, build a new one. He didn't say anything. My whole point, we need to do better and bring back the swimming pools. If you look around this room, we don't have anybody 15 or 20. We need to start investing in the youth. They are the future, and they don't feel connected. I talk to them. I find out what's on their mind. And again, we need to do better. So
bond programs meetings start next month, and so that's where a lot of those type of items will be talking about on what goes into the bond program next year. Yes, ma'am.
Oh wait, sorry. Right here in the red, and then we'll go there.
All right, mine is not a question as much as a follow-up or a suggestion based on the commercial repeat offenders. Look into the city of Euless. City of Euless has had a major problem with that. They ended up having multiple types of businesses that they went through a series of processes where these particular hot properties were using up a lot of city resources across all different departments. And they went through a process that ended up fining those in an extreme amount of money, and then forcing them to pay that for that service. I don't know the process itself. If that business did not do it, they effectively foreclosed the business. And Euless was able to retrieve a lot of their financial services and got rid of problem hotspots. And those businesses no longer exist. And we're not talking like one or two properties. I can think off the top of my head probably 8 or 9 major offenders in that area. And
we'll make sure we look into that.
Definitely, so there are ways to do it, and they have already done it. So a path to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't see a line item for libraries, and this kind of piggybacks on what Christopher said.
Mm-hmm.
District 11 has, I guess, about 6 libraries. However, none of those are on the west side of 35. And the only one that we had there in South Fort Worth got closed so they could put the History Center there. And they opened a little boutique library in La Gran Plaza, which does not meet the needs of the community.
I think there's a recommendation. That's again a bond question. There's a recommendation in the bond program to move the History Center into the old City Hall, back down into downtown, which would allow us to then open up that library again.
Well, that would be great because it's very much needed.
You need to come out and vote for it. I'm not advocating. Just letting you know.
I will vote for it if it opens our library for sure. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're past our time. I appreciate everybody coming, and thanks for your comments and suggestions. And we'll definitely look into some of those things as we go forward. Have a good afternoon.